Hello, this is the Brave Knight Mercenary Spotlight on Asmode after his February 24, 2022 rework. Asmode got one change, so calling this a rework is generous. My prior Asmode video is still relevant and I recommend you watch this one if you have no clue what Asmode does, and my counters and check section is written with the implication that you watched my prior Spotlight. I'm going to approach this video a bit differently and focus more on his changes and the recontextualization of his skill set with how the game has evolved. Let's begin. So I'm only going to go over two skills for Asmode. The first skill I want to go over is Asmode's first skill, Bloody Pillage. The skill is unchanged, but the context involving the skill is a bit different now. My prior video mentions of a few crit damage thresholds that Asmode needs to meet in order to one-shot a unit with 70% incoming damage reduction, but that threshold is a lot more easy to reach now because of three things. Number 1, Asmode could be rank boosted to increase his support stat. Number 2, Soul Gear Amulet stats could be re-rolled and Soul Gears themselves could be limit broken. Number 3, Asmode Knight of Desire skill gives double of his stats now. Basically, the math matters less because killing range is far more easier to reach. Dump some good rage runes on him and buff him once and he's mostly set. One last and really big note is that Asmode isn't as strong offensively as he was before due to the large amount of guard units introduced since his companion update. Furthermore, a lot of more units can increase their incoming damage reduction cap, which makes it nearly impossible for Asmode to kill him, especially if they're at 99.9%. Moving on to Asmode's second skill, his real updated skill is Knight of Desire. It functions the same as it did before, but gives double of his stats now, which is significant to say the least. His plus 15 version of the skill still allows him to provide crit stats to his allies when he dies, but now the number has been raised to match the same value that he provided when he was alive. It also lasts 4 more turns. Unsurprisingly, Asmode is relatively similar to how he was before, given that this rework was just changing numbers to one of his skills. He can still kill things without ever normal attacking them, and ignores taunts and concentrated fire. Asmode tends to be very few things nowadays with his offensive tricks alone, but his new buffs to his aura is really good to provide value to his team while still potentially scoring some easy kills along the way. His buff also gives him less reliance on depending on other supports to increase his stats and improves Asmode's consistency overall. Asmode is very effective as a bomb. In some situations where the enemy is using the Falcon spell and is targeting a support, Asmode is a very solid throwaway support. When most supports die, well, they die, but Asmode still provides a highly potent stat enhancement for 16 turns after his death, assuming he's plus 15 of course. Another means of using them is to delay his turn order and have other units try to break the form. He could potentially score some pretty easy kills if the enemy front line is gone. When it comes to runes, he still uses rage runes. His Soul Gear Amulet should also try to focus on crit damage as it provides him the best bang for the buck. The boost from having support stat on his amulet isn't as big compared to crit damage. The other stats tend to range between useless and mediocre. I'll go over what Asmode counters. The general idea is that Asmode checks any unit that can't break their incoming damage reduction cap or lack a persisting guard when Asmode moves. Some new or reworked units where this is relevant is Orphina, Larkus, Isaac before he moves, Slain, Babariba, and Eldora. Because he doesn't normal attack, he could potentially transform Scrime by hitting him without fear of being attacked back. Otherwise, he beats the same units as he did before, so you can check out my prior Asmode Spotlight and it's mostly relevant. I'll go over some Asmode counters now. There are 3 main ways to tank Asmode: guards, raising your incoming damage reduction cap, and more specialized mains. For guards, we have Lucius, Kaelin, Delcihidne, Seto, Mammonier, Belfern, and Vermont. For the incoming damage reduction people, we have Cilione, Eden, Angelica, Beliet, Benaka, and Isabel. For the special people, we have Calarone with their distortion damage along with Bane. As for killing Asmode, it's the same way that you did before, so just refer to my old video. So some synergies with Asmode. Asmode works well with anyone really. He could be paired with some front attackers, especially with ones that can handle the matchups that he cannot, such as Dwen, Alec, or Larkus. Overall though, he could just be inserted into most compositions without trouble. Okay, so for my opinion, Asmode's changes improve him to be a better crit support and even better cannon fodder, and I'm cool with that. In fact, I think it's a really good change for him. Asmode is a strange character to say at the very least. I do not like him, and it's not because he looks stupid. I sometimes see players complain about Asmode's viability, and definitely saw those complaints resurface after his quote-unquote rework. Some people say that he should ignore guards now, or also ignore incoming damage reduction, and my response to that is simply, are you out of your fucking mind? Pardon my French, but Asmode breaks so many rules in a way that I feel is unhealthy for the game. He can attack with almost no commitment or risk due to being a support, and he can't be taunted away either. If a unit like that is too strong in the wrong way, shit gets bad real fast, and it's not the fact that Asmode breaks the mold, it's the fact that he does so in such an egregious way that feels really silly to fight against. Way back then before the companion update when he was really hard to tank, you pretty much had to lose a unit, on top of potentially losing another unit to the one that actually attacks after Asmode. Asmode is manageable right now because he has a lot less favorable matchups, and even then this character still appears in champion forms. Just think about that for a minute. I agree with this rework because it buffs his aspect about being a proper conventional support and doesn't focus on the things that could potentially break the game. Asmode still holds the distinction of being able to buff his entire team's crit values when battle begins. His buff is really strong now and is unremovable, which is surprisingly rare with supports nowadays, and unlike most supports, his buffs are guaranteed to persist for a while after he dies. So the question begs, should one invest in Asmode? And my answer leans towards no. If you haven't built already, he's a decent unit to have, especially if you do Guild War. Some Guild War defense forms will utilize Falcon to target your support, and Asmode is still a great candidate to take the ball. His buff also requires plus 15 to see the most investment out of it. Asmode is definitely not plus 15 legend material currently, and if you didn't start building him yet, you don't need to start now. He's only really useful in a very few formats anyways. My main reason for not recommending Asmode is simply because he's too unwieldy for the general player. He's great if you really know what you're doing and trying to check specific enemies in arena, but most players will see their ancient coins better invested in other units. Overall, I'm a bit harsh on Asmode, and maybe it's a bit personal. I've consistently been screwed over by this character before and after his companion update. I do think he's in a decent state now, at least as fine as he'll ever be given his weird playstyle, but trust me on this, you do not want this character to be buffed in the wrong ways. Thanks for watching my Asmode Rework Mercenary Spotlight. Stay tuned for more.